or as some people like to call me, Pumice, and I'm going to be going over the insights into pre-eruption magma storage conditions recorded by plagioclase textures for the 1,000-year-old eruption of Paint Pot Crater in Medicine Lake volcano, and I did my research with Brandon. So, first of all, it doesn't take a geologist to know that volcanoes are dangerous, and volcanic eruptions are dangerous that can cause mass destruction and can even cause death. And understanding how these eruptions are triggered will help reduce the risks that the eruptions cause. And these types of triggers that cause an eruption is just convective transfer of heat within the magma chamber, and then the overpressurization of the magma chamber will trigger the eruption. Kind of like in this diagram. So we kind of have this idea of, well, Kinsler et al. And many people have this idea of this type of lava magma within this chamber in this one long conduit and tube, kind of like a balloon and a straw. And how does the magma ascend through the crust? Well, a very popular and widely cited model from Kinsler et al., which is based on results from previous work done at Medicine Lake from Julie Donnelly. And this model that Kinsler created was mainly based on whole rock geochemistry and paid very little attention to the crystal textures and crystal compositions. Kind of like in this, where he kind of just assumed this one big balloon and straw. Well, in reality, it is more so of a very complex balloons and straws, but not necessarily, where there's a lot going on that we still don't necessarily understand, but doing these types of studies will help us better understand this complexity. So my research focus is on the 1,107-year-old eruption of Paint Pot Crater, right here, that's located on the southwest flank of Medicine Lake volcano. And the Paint Pot Crater deposits were, a focus of Kinsler et al., but again, the crystal textures and compositions were not elaborated on in his paper that he wrote. It was more so just of his whole rock geochemistry. And my research of the thin sections that I've done show that plagioclase phenocrysts display disequilibrium textures within the Paint Pot Crater lavas. So my research question, I may look like two, but it's actually just one that's connected. So what do the crystal textures and crystal compositions record about the evolution of magma erupted from Paint Pot Crater? Did the magmas experience magma mixing events? Were multiple magmas involved in this? We'll find out. So, the setting here is Medicine Lake volcano, which is approximately 20 kilometers east of the main Cascade volcanic arc, where you see Lassen and Shasta, within the Basin and Range domain. And Medicine Lake volcano is a quaternary shield volcano with many vents along its rim. And these events produced magmas that were of the composition of calc alkaline, which you typically see in the Cascade volcanic arc, and tholeiitic, which you typically see in the Basin and Range domain. But approximately 300,000 years ago is when mafic magmas dominated the Medicine Lake terrain, and these vents that were all around obviously produced rhyolites, dacite, andesitic, basalts, andesites, and basalts. But Paint Pot Crater was a cinder cone that erupted a basaltic andesite, which is of mafic origin. So my methods. I collected 4 samples in September with the volcanology group. And these 2 samples right here were collected in the blue oval, which was on the Paint Pot Crater lava flow, and then these two samples I collected at the base of Paint Pot Crater. And I created billets at the geology petrology lab, and then I sent these billets all to Spectrum Petrographics to get professionally polished spin sections made so I can look at them through a petrographic microscope. My second method that I used was a FE Quanta 250 scanning electron microscope. This isn't the one that I used. I didn't get a good picture of it from the biology lab, so we're gonna have to use this. And essentially, it is a very lengthy process of dusting your thin section with carbon, so that way you can put it in the chamber where it will vent and pump out nitrogen, so that way we can get backscatter electron images. And I only captured 2 of my samples because they were the most diverse of the plagioclase textures. And you may be thinking, what's a plagioclase texture? Well, I'll tell you if you don't know. So I saw a consistent out of all 4 of my samples of these plagioclase disequilibrium textures. Dusty sieved, coarsely sieved, and oscillatory zoning with dissolution unconformities. So dusty sieve is basically a packed mesh of micron-sized melt inclusions that have been superimposed on a type of ring or rim within the plagioclase. And this happens when it is formed from low temperature host magma that has been engulfed by an intruding basalt during a magma mixing event. And then coarsely sieve is almost like the same as dusty sieve, except it's not, because it's an interconnected network of coarser cavities that have also been superimposed over a ring or rim. And this forms from rapid decompression from higher pressures in the lower crust to lower pressures in the shallow crust. So it basically goes high pressure, low crust, low pressure, high crust. And then oscillatory zoning with dissolution unconformities are layers that record small changes about the temperature, pressure, melt composition, and essentially the older layers are going to be toward the center of the rings, and then the younger layers are going to be from outside the core to the rim. My results. So with a petrographic microscope, I was able to look at all of my samples, and I found consistently that all of my samples included the mineralogy of plagioclase, clinopyroxene, plus or minus some olivine, and orthopyroxene. And in all of my samples, I found dusty sieve, oscillatory zoning with dissolution unconformities, coarsely sieved, and in my first sample that I collected from the lava flow, I found that some of my plagioclase were clear and euhedral that were not damaged. And with my backscatter electron images, these are, so the first one is of this one, which is a plagioclase getting dissolved in a clinopyroxene. And here you can see with the backscatter electron imaging, you can see the melt inclusions and the coarsely sieved texture, while this nice rim of it being dissolved is visible. And then this one isn't pictured on my petrography slide, but this one is of a dusty sieve plagioclase that has a very thin rim that was captured in 400 microns, and then this plagioclase right here shows oscillatory zoning with unconformities that have been melted and healed repeatedly. So what I kind of discovered was Paint Pot Crater samples exist as crystals with and without disequilibrium textures, like dusty sieve, coarsely sieved, oscillatory zoning with unconformities, and the presence of all of these crystals with different textures that come from stable magma and from an unstable magma are consistent with magma mixing origins. Kind of like this, where the magmatic system, the melt processing is deep within the crust, and it finally produces that melt that is transferred and mixing. In conclusion, the previous studies done by Kinsler et al. Produced a model that was mainly based on whole rock geochemistry, but it did not provide any petrological or textures to talk about, even though what I discovered, the plagioclase phenocryst did display a range of these disequilibrium textures and compositions that are consistent with a magma mixing origin. However, further research will have to be done on the chemical compositions to further aid in the study to see what type of compositions the magmas have gone through in this mixing event. And I would also just like to take this time to thank Brandon, Steve, Spectrum Petrographic, Laura, and the volcanology class for their help and dedication, as well as acknowledging the land that we were on and the people that came before that have done the research, as well as the entire department, which aided me in almost a $2,000 scholarship. And here are all my sources.